The aliens had thought Earth was finished. They had unleashed their bombs, shattered the planet, and crushed the human resistance with overwhelming force. The powerful fleet that had attacked the Earth moved on quickly, confident in their victory, leaving behind only destruction and chaos. To them, it was a foregone conclusion that the human species would never recover. The Earth's cities were smoking ruins, its people scattered and broken, struggling to survive amid the ashes of their former world. Yet, despite all of this, something strange began to happen. It started with an unexpected signal, one that sent a chill through the command centers of the alien fleet. At first, it was just a faint, barely noticeable transmission. It was a simple message, a distress signal, but something about it felt different. It didn't carry the usual signs of desperation or hopelessness that the aliens had come to expect from defeated civilizations. The message repeated itself over and over again. "This is Earth. We are not finished." It was short and simple, yet it echoed through the emptiness of space, reaching the ears of every alien officer in the fleet. The alien commanders brushed it off at first, thinking it was a last futile cry from a broken world. How could such a devastated species possibly fight back? They had seen the devastation with their own eyes. There was no way humans could ever rally again. But then, something shifted. As the days passed, the transmission didn't stop. It repeated incessantly, growing stronger and clearer with every cycle. It was a message from humanity, but it was not the message of a species begging for mercy. No, it was something far more unsettling, a signal of defiance. The aliens began to feel unease, an emotion they had not experienced in centuries. The idea that the humans would have the audacity to continue speaking, even after such devastation, was something they couldn't ignore. It didn't make sense. This was supposed to be the end. This was supposed to be the moment when humanity crumbled and accepted their fate. Instead, they were defying it. The alien commanders ordered a deeper scan of the transmission source. To their surprise, it wasn't coming from a single point on Earth. The signal was now being broadcasted from multiple locations all over the planet. Hidden deep in the remains of human cities and underground bunkers, survivors were working together, organizing, and finding a way to fight back. It became apparent that the bombings had not completely wiped out human civilization. In fact, it seemed as though the survivors were using the very destruction the aliens had caused to hide their movements, preparing in secret, with a determination the aliens had never expected. The message shifted in tone, and it grew more deliberate. The humans were no longer simply announcing their survival. They were promising something. They were promising to make the invaders pay for what they had done. It was a warning, a threat wrapped in a message of cold fury. The aliens had thought the humans would be easy prey, just another species to conquer, another planet to destroy. But the sheer persistence of the signal was starting to erode their confidence. For the first time, the aliens wondered if they had underestimated Earth in ways they hadn't even considered. As the transmissions continued, the alien fleet grew nervous. They began to question their initial assessment. Was Earth truly as weak as they had believed, or had they missed something crucial? Was humanity hiding something they hadn't seen yet? The transmission was not just a message of survival. It was a rallying cry. The humans were gathering their strength, drawing together the scattered remnants of their world. They weren't simply waiting to be defeated. They were planning something far more dangerous than the aliens could have anticipated. The alien fleet began to reorganize, but the damage had been done. The seed of doubt had been planted. The thought that humanity could come back from this, that Earth was not as defeated as they believed, lingered in the minds of the invaders. Despite their superior numbers, despite their vast technological advantage, they had begun to feel the weight of an unsettling realization. Humanity wasn't finished, and that was something the aliens hadn't been prepared for. The thought of facing an enemy who refused to accept defeat, an enemy who was now fueled by anger and vengeance, was something that sent ripples of fear through the once confident alien commanders. What had they truly unleashed? The answer was still unknown, But one thing was certain. They were about to find out. The aliens, having underestimated humanity's resolve, now found themselves uneasy as the message from Earth continued to pulse through space, growing louder and clearer with each passing moment. It was no longer just a faint cry from a broken species. It had transformed into something far more sinister, a promise of retaliation. The commanders of the alien fleet gathered in their war rooms, their once confident expressions replaced by furrowed brows and worried glances. They had thought Earth's destruction was a done deal, but the transmissions were forcing them to reconsider. Despite their initial belief that the humans were nothing more than primitive and weak, the message sent by Earth's survivors suggested otherwise. The signal spoke of defiance, not desperation, and it was being broadcasted from multiple locations across the planet, as if the humans were organizing in secret. The aliens had thought they had wiped out the heart of humanity, its cities, its governments, its military, but it seemed they were wrong. Humanity had always survived through adversity, and even in the face of seemingly total annihilation, they had found a way to resist. The aliens could no longer ignore the reality unfolding before them. Earth was not broken, not in the way they had assumed. The survivors, hidden in the rubble of their cities and deep beneath the Earth's surface, were not waiting to be conquered. They were preparing to fight. As the signal reached every corner of the galaxy, a sense of dread began to settle over the invaders. They had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive. And now it was too late. The humans had a fire within them, something that couldn't be extinguished by bombs or overwhelming force. It was clear to the alien commanders now that humanity would not bow to their might. They would make them regret ever setting foot on Earth. But what they didn't know yet, what they couldn't possibly understand, was the full extent of what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. The aliens had only just awakened the wrath of a species that had long been underestimated. What followed would shake the galaxy to its core. The alien commanders, still trying to digest the implications of Earth's defiant message, began to formulate a plan. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, and they now feared the consequences of that mistake. Their first strategy had been simple: annihilate the planet, break the spirit of its people, and leave no trace. But the signal was proof that their methods hadn't worked as they expected. The alien fleet had wiped out cities, destroyed vital infrastructure, and yet the signal persisted, echoing across space, growing stronger and more determined with every passing moment. The realization that humanity had somehow survived, and more importantly, was organizing for a comeback, hit the alien leaders like a cold slap. They had anticipated a brief, brutal conquest, followed by a quick victory. But Earth's resilience had thrown them off balance. The invaders had expected the remnants of humanity to cower in fear, begging for mercy, or simply fading away into history. Instead, the humans had turned their sorrow and despair into something far more dangerous: resolve. The message wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't an apology for the attack. It was a declaration of war. And the worst part for the alien commanders was that the humans, despite their primitive technology, had something that the invaders lacked: unity. The humans had come together, united under one banner, despite the odds. They weren't divided by race, ideology, or culture anymore. The signal was clear. It was the voice of a united world, a world that had risen from the ashes of its destruction. The aliens, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves faced with an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The idea of humanity's resilience was alien to them, and the very thought that Earth could fight back sent a ripple of fear through their ranks. They had expected a species that would bend and break under the pressure of defeat. What they had gotten, instead, was a species that was beginning to rise from the ashes of war, to pick up the pieces, and most terrifying of all, to fight back. As the days passed, the alien leaders convened in secret, discussing their options. The once confident commanders now doubted their previous assumptions. The humans' unexpected strength was beginning to show in unexpected ways. Earth's response to their invasion had been swift, and even though the invaders had destroyed vast portions of the planet's infrastructure, the resilience of humanity was undeniable. Small pockets of resistance had begun to form in the wreckage of the cities, and a network of survivors, military and civilian alike, had started to communicate, share resources, and develop strategies. It wasn't just the technology they had underestimated, it was the sheer willpower of the human race. The invaders had thought they could break the human spirit, but instead they had sparked a fire that was now growing beyond their control. Every moment the aliens waited, the resistance grew stronger. The humans had mobilized quickly, sending signals across the galaxy, rallying their allies, and preparing to strike back with whatever limited means they had. This wasn't the fractured, vulnerable humanity the aliens had expected. This was a people who had been pushed to the edge, but had not crumbled. Instead, they were fighting back with everything they had left. The invaders now realized they had awoken a sleeping giant. But the problem was far bigger than they had anticipated. The war on Earth had become a global struggle, and the planet was no longer isolated. The resistance wasn't just local, it was growing, building alliances with other worlds who had watched the alien invaders with suspicion for years. Alien empires that had once remained neutral were now starting to question whether they should support the invaders or help Earth. Rumors of Earth's resilience spread quickly across the galaxy, sparking fires of rebellion in corners of the universe where no one had ever dared to challenge the aliens before. The invaders had thought they could crush humanity quickly and efficiently, but now they were faced with an uprising that was as unpredictable as it was relentless. The galaxy was about to witness something they had never seen before: humanity's wrath unleashed. As the invaders began to realize the true extent of humanity's defiance, the shockwaves of their decision started to reverberate across the galaxy. What had once seemed like a simple conquest was quickly spiraling into something far more complicated and dangerous. Humanity, despite its relatively primitive technology, had proven itself to be far more resourceful and resilient than anyone could have predicted. The resistance on Earth, once thought to be little more than a few scattered pockets of survivors, was now a well-organized, determined force, operating with precision and unity. Small, scrappy factions had come together, sharing resources and strategies, and the people who had once lived in fear were now fighting for their very survival. Earth's survivors were no longer just trying to survive. They were preparing to fight back, and the alien invaders were beginning to realize that they were no longer in control. Every day that passed saw the resistance grow stronger, more coordinated, and more dangerous. The aliens had expected to break the human spirit by overwhelming them with firepower, but instead they had awoken a force of nature. The humans, in their desperation, had found strength in unity, and with that unity, they began to develop new technologies, reverse engineering the alien tech they had salvaged from the wreckage. They began to build new weapons, craft new plans, and strategize ways to hit the invaders where it hurt the most. While the aliens were bogged down in their own arrogance, underestimating the tenacity of their prey, the humans were making strides that no one had ever thought possible. They were not just surviving. They were evolving, adapting, and transforming into something that the aliens would soon come to fear. What had once seemed like a hopeless situation for humanity was now becoming the foundation of a rebellion that would change the course of the galaxy. In every corner of Earth, a new sense of hope was growing, and with that hope came the promise of retribution. The aliens had underestimated the humans' ability to rise from the ashes, but they were about to learn that underestimating humanity was their greatest mistake. What began as a simple fight for survival was quickly becoming a war that would determine the future of not only Earth but the entire galaxy. And the humans were no longer fighting alone. They were about to make their enemies beg for mercy. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, humanity's resilience only seemed to grow stronger, more unyielding in the face of the alien invasion. The human resistance had transformed into a formidable force, moving with an efficiency and precision that stunned the invaders. They no longer relied solely on their primitive weapons. They had learned to adapt, to use the alien technology against them. The same weapons that had once rained destruction upon Earth were now being turned back on their creators. The aliens, accustomed to easily crushing their enemies, were finding themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Earth's survivors, once broken and scattered, had become united by a singular purpose: revenge. They were no longer the frightened, weak humans the invaders had once seen them as. They were now a force to be reckoned with, a force that had the power to turn the tide of the war. The world's cities, once in ruins, were now humming with the sound of activity, as factories churned out weapons and ships designed to fight back against the invaders. The human military, working alongside scientists and engineers, had created new fleets of warships, sleek, deadly, and armed with alien technology that the invaders had never seen before. And as these new ships took to the skies, the aliens began to realize that their initial belief in humanity's inferiority was a fatal mistake. Humanity was no longer just a species fighting for survival. They had become the hunters. The tide of the war was shifting, and with each battle, the aliens began to understand that they were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. The human ships tore through the skies, their engines roaring with power as they attacked the invaders' strongholds, striking fear into the hearts of those who once thought they were invincible. The humans had learned to fight smart, not just hard, and the invaders could no longer predict their movements or intentions. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, humanity would strike from an unexpected direction, causing chaos and confusion within the alien ranks. The invaders, who had once mocked humanity for its weakness, were now finding themselves on the defensive, retreating before the relentless assault of a species they had underestimated. And as they retreated, the humans were there, chasing them down, striking fear into their hearts with every victory. The invaders, who had thought that Earth would be an easy conquest, now found themselves wondering if they had made a grave mistake. With each passing day, humanity's wrath grew stronger, more focused, and the invaders knew that it was only a matter of time before they would be forced to beg for mercy. As the human forces continued to gain ground, the once powerful invaders were now on the brink of collapse. The alien command structures, which had once operated with supreme confidence, were beginning to fracture under the pressure of humanity's relentless attacks. Their military leaders, who had dismissed Earth as nothing more than a fragile, insignificant planet, now found themselves scrambling to regroup. But no matter how many reinforcements they sent, no matter how many planets they plundered to fuel their war machine, the humans were always one step ahead. Their tactics were unpredictable, and their strategy was evolving faster than the invaders could understand. The human warships, once simple and weak compared to their advanced alien counterparts, were now equipped with technology that turned the tide of every battle. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and innovate, and that had become their greatest mistake. What had started as a war of invasion had transformed into a war of survival for the invaders, and their every move was met with fierce resistance. As the humans closed in on the heart of the alien empire, the invaders began to panic. Messages of retreat and surrender were being whispered through their ranks, but pride and arrogance kept the leaders from admitting defeat. The once mighty alien fleets, now battered and broken, began to retreat, fleeing from the relentless human pursuit. The invaders, who had believed Earth's people were incapable of standing up to their might, now found themselves pleading for mercy, as the humans showed no signs of stopping. The alien commanders, their pride shattered, watched helplessly as the human forces cut through their defenses, taking one victory after another. It was a sight they had never anticipated, and a reminder of how completely they had misjudged humanity. Their empire, once thought invincible, was crumbling, and Earth, the planet they had once deemed unworthy, was leading the charge. The tide had turned in the most unexpected of ways, and the humans, with their unmatched will to survive, were now forcing the invaders to face the consequences of their arrogance. The final blow came swiftly and decisively as the human fleet, now a force to be reckoned with, launched a full-scale assault on the alien homeworld. The once invulnerable strongholds of the invaders were no match for the sheer power and resolve of Earth's forces. With every blast from their warships, they shattered the alien defenses, leaving nothing but rubble in their wake. The aliens, who had once controlled the stars with an iron fist, now found themselves cornered on their own soil. Their leaders, who had laughed at the idea of humanity ever challenging them, were now scrambling to save what little remained of their empire. The human fleet pushed deeper into the heart of their territory, capturing key command centers and vital resources. The invaders, unable to keep up with the relentless human advance, were forced to retreat into the dark corners of their own world, hiding in fear. And yet, despite the alien leadership's pleas for mercy, Earth's forces showed no sign of stopping. The humans had made it clear, this was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a battle for justice, for retribution, and for proving that humanity would never again be seen as weak or insignificant. The invaders, who had once seen Earth as a primitive backwater, now understood the true power of humanity's spirit. As the final remnants of the alien forces crumbled, the human fleet stood victorious, having delivered a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Earth had been bombed, its cities destroyed, its people scattered, but humanity had answered back with fire, and the galaxy would never again underestimate them. The invaders had begged for mercy, but Earth had shown them none, for they knew now that humanity's wrath was a force unlike any other.